A church that holds food giveaways on Mondays is finding it tough to meet demand that's only expected to increase.
As Fox 5's Les Crifferton tells us, House of Prayer is concerned it is already having to turn people away.
The last 2 weeks have been really difficult.
Natasha Hooks says these are tough times for families experiencing food shortages. Those families turn to food banks and community groups for help, like Moments of Blessing, House of Prayer. But even their pantry is thin these days.
Last week we didn't get much meat. We got like 1 box of meat, and so we tried to stretch thin.
Stretching means providing other foods, vegetables, fruits, and canned goods. Even doing that, they can't meet demand.
We had to stop the line at 1 o'clock, and typically we keep going until 3 or until we run out.
Monday, between 60 and 100 people went away empty-handed. For those families and those who rely on food pantries and government assistance, times are about to get tougher. The Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, known as SNAP benefits, are being reduced after this month because the special benefits brought in during COVID is ending. Some recipients will see their SNAP benefits go from more than $200 a month down to between $65 and $95 a month. Not enough to feed a family of 6.
If you go to the market, everything is very, very expensive, very high, very, very expensive. Sometimes you cannot afford it to buy, things.
Ishmael Gonzalez turned to the church for food for the first time Monday. He's worried about the future.
Getting, my Social Security is not enough to pay for my rent and to pay for all the utilities and all that. So we hardly, we make it.
3 Square Food Bank is anticipating a spike in calls for help in the coming weeks. In a release to Fox 5, they said, quote, "We have to make sure to let the community know that 3 Square is here to support our community and not to worry. We have plenty of agency partners or pantries that one can go to," end quote. Les Crifferton, Fox 5 News, local, Las Vegas.